Hello, everyone. I hope you're all doing well. Before anything else, I would like to introduce myself first. I am a Mary Jade Jakosalem, and I am currently enrolled at AMA University Online Education under their Master of Science in Computer Science program. So, for this video, I will be discussing my course project, the part 1 of my course project for the subject ITE7108, or application development and emerging technologies. So, to give you some background there, for the first part, I was assigned to create a PowerPoint presentation, at the same time present to you three chosen topics. And I actually chose the following topics. I actually chose the first group of topics. Topic 1 is the workflow. Topic 2 is the structure, and topic 3 is the style. I will be discussing all of this in the duration of the video. So I hope you stay tuned. So for topic 1, we have the workflow. So what is the workflow? So actually, when we say workflow, we are referring to how things work. Hence the term workflow. So how things work in a web application process. So these are some common tools used for creating web applications. First, we have the text editor. A text editor is actually a software application that creates and edits plain text files, and most of our PCs, laptops have text editors, inbuilt text editors. So this means that we can create an actual HTML application without downloading any special application, just with the typical text editor that can be found in most of our PCs and laptops. Next one is what we call the version control system. It's actually a software that keeps track of changes made to the source code. So it's a software that would help us know whether a change was made, who made the change, etc. Then the last one is a web browser, which I believe you are somehow familiar with, because it's a software that allows a user to locate, access, and display web pages. So most of us, even if you are not in the computer industry, you are familiar with the web browser because you are using it to access your websites like Facebook, Google, X, YouTube. One example of a web browser, one of the most popular one here in the Philippines, is actually Google Chrome. So Google Chrome is an example of a web browser. So as I move along this video, I will be discussing all the three of this in depth. So next slide. First, we will be discussing the text editor. So again, it's a program used to interact with our code, with our source code. And it's actually a tool that will interact with most often when we are in web development, because this is where we edit our code, we create our code. So hence, text editors, even though it's a very common tool, it's often overlooked because what's a text editor, right? However, this is the most essential tool in web application development. Just FYI, by the way, codes are forms, concrete building blocks of our application. So we use our source code to create our applications. Actually, this is an example of how the user interface of a text editor would look like with code. So on my end, actually, I am using brackets as my text editor. So later on, I will show it to you. Next, we have two types of text editors. We have two categories. We have first the GUI editor, or the graphic user interface editor. And the second one is the terminal editor. So for the GUI editor, it is more commonly used by programmers, by developers, because it responds to the mouse well, meaning you can use the mouse to navigate the GUI editor, of course, as well as our keyboard. And it is much easier to use as compared to your typical terminal editor. So hence, that is why this is the preferred category of text editor. It is an interface through which a user interacts with electronic devices through the use of icons, menus, and other visual indicators or representation. So, examples of GUI editors include Coda, Sublime Text, TextMate, Brackets, and your typical Notepad++ for Windows. However, sadly, I'm a Mac user before. when I was in college, I was a user of the Notepad++. However, it's only available in for Windows OS. So right now I am a Mac OS user, so I am now using brackets. But for AMA, I know that AMA is using Sublime Text. However, I was much more comfortable with brackets. Next one is the terminal editor. It's more difficult than GUI editors, actually, is what I've said. It's a command line interface that allows you to interact with your computer through text-based commands, meaning you cannot use the mouse to navigate with it. You only use your keyboard and using text-based commands. There's no interface, there are no icons. And some examples of terminal editors include your Emacs and Vim. So let me show you. So what I've said, I'm using brackets. So this is actually what brackets look like. So let me pull it up first. So this is brackets here. So if you create a new file with brackets, it's just like your typical text editor. Later, I will show you how it will work. So this is brackets, and I have here a terminal editor, which is when you are a Mac OS is what you're using. So this is an example of a terminal editor, which I will show you later how to use. Okay, so going back to our discussion, I hope you are still catching up. The second one, the tool that we are going to discuss is again the version control system. So first, what is version control? It's actually a process that allows us to keep labeled checkpoints in our code so we can always refer or revert back to them if necessary. So it's somehow a tool to help us keep track of changes and where we can actually revert or go back to a previous state of a document. Hence, a version control system this time is a software that helps the development team to keep track of changes made to the source code. This is more especially useful if you are developing a huge web application. For example, you are a working professional already, and then there's a lot of developers in your team. So the version control system will actually help you know who is making changes, what are the changes being made in case you want to revert to an older version. The version control system is there to help you. So examples of version control system include CVS, Mercurial, Perforce, Subversion, and JIT. So for AMA, in our modules, we're actually being encouraged to use the JIT. So what is the JIT? It's again an example of a version control system. It's free. Number one, it's free. It's open source. It's a free and open source distributed version control system, which is really good, especially for students. And it is the most commonly used version control system available today. Again, since it's a VCS, it's a software for tracking the changes. And it actually does not rely on a single server. So that's the JIT. So here we have some JIT basic commands that we commonly use. So first one, we have the JIT init, or its main function is to help us initialize our repository of our version controls. Then we have the JIT status if you wanted to show the repository status. So this is actually what we type. These are the commands. Then JIT add files, meaning we have to stage files for the next commit. We are adding a new file. So it's like basically we're creating a new file in layman's terms. Then we have the JIT commit -m message, meaning we are now committing stage files with a message. So later I will discuss to you what's the difference of saving and committing. So committing is somehow like saving. We are now committing a specific version of our source code, hence the JIT commit. And the JIT log will enable us to view the history of the repository of what changes were made, what happened, so on. So what is now the difference between saving and committing? So what I said is somehow similar to saving. However, it's actually different. So when we say save, which is actually the most common term that we are familiar with, we typically say, okay, save that version, save the file, save whatever. When we say save, you're actually overwriting files on your computer's disk. This means that you cannot actually go back to the previous version of your document. So for example, I type in hello world, then I save it. Then I delete the world and I just type in hello, then I save it. So since I overwrite the same file, it means that I cannot go back to the version of the file wherein I type in hello world. I have to do it again, hence saving. You are overwriting something. So for commit, it's actually a term used for version control systems. It helps you keep track of all the changes made since a file was last committed. And the main difference is that you can always go back to a file's previous version as long as you commit the file. Hence, the main difference of our saving and committing. Then, we have here different Unix commands. This is used for our terminal editors. And first, we have the pwd command or the print working directory. It actually shows you your location, where you are, if you wanted to check where you are right now. ls is for the list all contents of present directory. You wanted to have a list since we don't have your typical folders in a terminal editor. We just have text. So you wanted to use ls to want to see all the contents under that directory. By the way, FYI, when we say directory, it's actually our folder. However, if you're using terminal, we call it as directories instead of folders. When we say LSA, it means you all list all contents with inclusion of hidden files. Then CD, dir, inside the dir is actually stands for directory. It means that you are moving to a directory called dir to another. So you are just moving between directories. Then mkdir space dir. Dir here is actually the name. So you could change this. Like for example, CD photos, CD video. Same with make dir here, mkdir. Let's say I wanted to create a folder hello. So mkdir space hello. So when we say mkdir, we are actually making a new directory called dir to another. So let me show you how this works in our terminal editor. So this is our terminal editor right now. So let us first show where we are. So let's type pwd. So right now we are under the users Mary Jade Jakosalem. This is our address right now. So pwd. So let's say I wanted to go to the desktop folder. So cd desktop. Again, this is the name of our folder. So we are now currently at the desktop, but let us double check. Let us type in pwd. Yes, we are at the desktop because users Mary Jade Jakosalem desktop. Then what if I wanted to know what are the contents of my desktop? So I'll just write here ls. These are actually the folders under my desktop. We have your MSCS, to do, USLSH, EU, so on, so videos, documents, so on. So I use the cd command. Then what if I wanted to create a new folder? So I am now actually demonstrating all the commands that I have shown a while ago. So let us make a new folder. So make mkdir. Let's say I wanted to name the folder as hello. So we have created the folder. So let us check. Let us check pwd. So we are now under the users at Mary Jade Jakosalem desktop under the, we are still the desktop. So let's change directory to hello here. So we are now currently at our hello folder. And if we check, yes, it's correct. So FYI, just to show that it is actually reflecting as well to our desktop, let me show you my desktop. So here we have a folder hello. Okay. So let us say I wanted to create a folder inside hello to, okay, let me make dir, let's say hello, and then I want to name the folder as world. Okay. Then we change directly to world. And then let us open the folder hello. There is now a folder named world. Okay, so let me create another folder to show it to you. So make dir, let's say my name. I wanted to create a folder with my name, Jade. So So inside the world, we can now see a folder Jade. Okay, so that's how it works. So I hope you understood that one. Then we have the second one, which is our web browser. It's our second tool. So it's a software program that allows a user to locate, access, and display web pages. It's something that we need to use for us to access all of the websites in the internet. Facebook, Google, YouTube, so on. So we actually, as future computer professionals, we must learn how to effectively use it as a developer tool, not just a window to the internet, because it actually includes very efficient developer tools, especially Google Chrome. The Chrome developer tools are very efficient, which actually will be discussed later on. Some examples of web browsers include Brave, Google Chrome, Mozilla Firefox, Internet Explorer, Opera, Safari, UC Browser, and there are other browsers out there actually, but these are one of the most popular. For me, I'm using Google Chrome. So let me share it to you. I know that you are familiar with Google Chrome. So this is my web browser that I'm using. Say I wanted to go to google.com. Yeah. So this is an example again of a browser. These are some example of the developer tools. I will just go here and go to more tools and go to developer tools here. Is it not opening? I guess it opened. Okay, here. These are our developer tools. Okay, this is a Chrome developer. Going back again. Next is the structure. So I will make this fast as to save time. This is our topic 2. That's the end of our topic 1 on the workflow. So first, what is a site structure? It refers to how you organize a website's content. It deals with how website content is grouped, linked, and presented to the visitor. So basically, it's how you organize. So for example, this one is an example of a site structure. So we have 2 core technologies for building web pages. First, we have the HTML, or the hypertext markup language. Then we have the CSS, or the cascading style sheet. So for this lesson, actually, we are going to focus more on the HTML, and for lesson 3, we are going to focus on CSS codes. But what is the hypertext markup language? It's a technology that allows us to specify the structure of the visual elements of a web application. It's developed to convey information over the internet using hyperlinks. Oh, actually, both of this will be typed in our text editors, hence why text editors are very important. So again, site structure, it's more on HTML structure. CSS, or cascading style sheet, is more on the layout itself, on the design of our web page. So hence, it manages the visual layout for a variety of devices, along with graphics and scripting. So usually, these two work together for us to create a website or a web page. So here, we have a typical HTML structure. So this structure can be seen to basically all HTML files. This is the basic structure. So first we have here the doc type HTML. So it actually, this line of code defines that it's an HTML5 document. Then the root element of an HTML page, HTML. So actually, for our tags, we call these as tags. We always have an opening and a closing tag. So again, this is our opening tag. This is our closing tag. We should always remember to close them so that there will be no errors in our code. The characteristic of a closing tag is that it's similar to an opening tag. However, there is a slash included. Then head here will contain the meta information about HTML. So basically, remember that everything that is inside the head will not be reflected to the actual web page. Okay, so for here, inside the head, we have the title. This will be the title of our web page. So for example, the title is My First Web App. Hence, this will show up on the tab. It's like the tab name. It will show up there, but it will not show up in the actual web page. Then we have the hello world, or the body rather. It's a container for all the visible contents. This time, all the contents inside the body will be seen directly in our web page. So one example of its content, there's just a lot of tags for the body, but one example is H1 Hello World. So we have here a large heading. So if we copy paste this structure and we put it in our text editor and we run it using our Google Chrome, we are actually going to see a text Hello World and have the title of our web page as my first web app. However, I am short in time because I am only allowed 30 minutes. So I am skipping na lang the demo. But you just have to copy paste this code and you have to save it. Like for me, I can copy paste it to brackets. Because yeah, I still have half to discuss. Then we have tags versus content. So basically, you have seen tags. Again, these are tags. So a tag is a type of metadata utilized to apply structure to the content of the page. It is contained by angle brackets. So if you see that it's inside an angle brackets, most of the time it's a tag. Then for a content, it's the content of the tags, what will actually appear. So text content like hello world. So for example here, the tag here is actually P. P for paragraph. Opening tag, closing tag. However, inside our opening tag, we have included an attribute. We have included here the attribute which is nice, a class attribute which is named nice. This is an example. This is actually a connector to our CSS code, which we will discuss in the topic 3. Then hello world here is the content. So in between the tags are actually the content. So the tags again are closed inside angle brackets. Then the content is usually between them, in between them. Then what is a paragraph? What is a comment? So again, as what I've said, the tag for for paragraph is just a simple P. So this one is a paragraph tag. Opening tag, closing tag. So just a P. So this tag is usually applied if we want to display multiple lines of content. So we have other tags like H1, H2, but for P, you are expecting multiple lines of content, right? A paragraph is long, right? So that's why if you are expecting multiple line of contents, you will use this tag. For example, here I'm a main paragraph, most likely associated with the H1 tag since I'm so close to it, so on. So this is a multiple line content. Then a comment is a convenient way to annotate an HTML or leave notes. It's used to explain something about the code, and we start an HTML comment with open angle bracket, exclamation point, dash, dash, and then put your comment there, then dash, 2 dashes, and then close the angle bracket. So, like this one, this is a comment. First and foremost, it's used for us to explain something. Like, for example, it's a huge code. We wanted to explain some things to our fellow web developers. Or for example, you're a teacher, you wanted to explain something on the sample code that you gave out. You could use comments. So you can use it to explain something to someone or for yourself, like for reminders, notes. And a comment cannot be seen in the web page. So if you include this one, these the exclamation point, so on, it will automatically categorize it as a comment, because as what I've said, everything inside the body can be seen to the web page except for comments. Comments are automatically ignored. So this, let's say this is a comment, this is the main heading, this is the main paragraph, these are comments. As soon as you indicate it's a comment using these symbols, automatically the browser will not show them to the web page. It will ignore the comment. Okay, then we have the headings, anchors, and lists. So first we have the headings. It represents important content on the page. Important contents are represented by different heading levels, H1 to H6. So actually we have 6 types of headings, H1, H2, H3, H4, H5, and H6. So again, they are headers. So basically when you have important content, you wanted to put emphasis on it, you use the H tag. So for example, this one, this is very important, so it's H1. So actually H1 is the most important content. Usually it's the biggest, it has the biggest font size. Then H2 less important, H3, H4, H6 is the least important. So H6 has the smallest font size as well. Then we have here anchors. So anchors are used to create links. So they can connect you to other information. So basically, they're clickable. Once you click them, you are expected to be directed to a new page or a part of your web page. So it's supposed like it's like a portal to somewhere. It's like a door. You can go to another place if you include anchors. So this is an example syntax of an anchor. So we have here anchor A, href equal to, you put inside the quotation marks the link that you want to go to, then close the angle bracket, then whatever text you want to display for the clickable text, then close the anchor with the closing tag. So what is an href attribute? Because we can see it here in the syntax. So basically, it advises the browser where to go when a connection is clicked. So in this case, in this particular code, once I click this is a link anchor, I will be redirected to www.example.com. Okay, this is an example again of our anchors here. So we have here, and this is a link. It is a little longer. I will just click it and I will be redirected to whatever address is stated here. I wanted to demo this one, but again, I am short in time, so I will just move on to the next slide. So headings, anchors, and lists. Next, we have the list. A list or specific tag that represents a list. So we have two types, OL and UL. We're using two different types of tags for our list. OL means ordered list. So meaning this is used when order matters. UL, unordered list, when order does not matter. So usually ordered lists, they appear like this. They are numbered, just like this one. It's an example of an ordered list, just like what is seen in our code here. UL now, unordered list, so they appear as bullets, just like this one. Okay. Then we have the document object model. Okay. So the document object model, or the DOM, is a method of presenting an object which can be characterized through HTML and afterward communicating by scripting language. So we are using JavaScript usually. So HTML tags characterize a progressive structure, just like this one. It's an example of a DOM model. And it's utilized by web browsers to make a visual delivery of our page, of how it will work. So here, this is an example of a DOM. So HTML, inside the HTML, we have the head and the body. Inside the head, title, H1. The body has a lot of elements. This is an example of a progressive structure. It's showing the visual delivery of the page. It's hierarchy. Then we have what we call a validation program. It's actually a set of instructions that naturally verifies whether your code adjusts to certain fundamental guidelines. It's a program that automatically checks if your code conforms to certain basic standards, and it helps you catch errors when web browsers want. So basically, it's a program used to see whether your codes have errors or not. So for HTML, we commonly use the W3C markup validation service, or the W3C actually stands for Worldwide Web Consortium. So this tool, the W3C markup validation service, allows user to check for free HTML5, HTML, and XHTML documents for possible errors. This will help us ensure the technical quality of our web page. Again, this is an example of a validation service. Last topic, the style, our topic 3. And again, the focus of this are our CSS codes. So first, in our CSS codes, we have what we call rule sets. So rule sets is a collection of style rules that are applied to some subset elements in the DOM. A CSS file is basically a collection of rule sets. So a rule set is comprised of the following. It's comprised of a selector, an opening curly brace, a list of rules, and an ending curly brace. So here, this is an example. This is the selector. For this one, we are selecting the body. This is our opening curly brace. This is our closing curly brace. And this one, the list, is a rule. So usually, a typical rule set has a lot of rules. But for example's sake, we just included one rule. So a rule is actually composed of the property. This is our property, the width. Then we have the colon. Then we have the value. And we have the semicolon. Remember, all rules should always end with a semicolon to avoid errors. So if you are more knowledgeable with the CSS codes, you will know exactly the rules and what specific values go with those rules. But that's why I like brackets, because brackets actually have suggestions on what are the possible values. That's why I use brackets. Then we have here setting colors using CSS. So in setting colors, we have two ways to specify colors in the CSS. We have our color names and our hex color code. So your color names for generally utilized colors, so these are limited. So this actually just include the typical colors that we use. Examples of color names: red, green, blue, pink, white, black. So our syntax here is usually color. Our rule here is color, colon, then let's say red, then semicolon. This means that the color of the text will turn to red. Or let's say the color of the background if you use the background as our property. Hex color code, this time, if we want to have a more specific color, we use the hex code. It's actually comprised of 6 hexadecimal digits ranging from 0 to 9 or A to F. So examples of the hex color code include hashtag 3B41C9. It actually starts with a hashtag. Hashtag F26B60, hashtag 60s, hashtag 6F. This one is actually black. This one is actually white. So these colors are more intricate. Then we also have comments in our CSS code, same with our HTML codes. It's just that the syntax is somehow different. So code explanations that are totally disregarded by the browser during execution. These are comments, what I've said before. An example in a comment in our CSS code is like this. We start with a backward slash, you call this asterisk, then the comment, then asterisk, and another backward slash. So this is, if this is seen by the browser, it automatically does not show it to the web page, and it is disregarded by the browser. Then actually HTML elements are actually displayed in 2 ways. We have the inline and the block style. When we say inline, the content will show up on the same line. So it will not spaced out. And it usually applies to elements that have the type A or span. So if it's an anchor or a span, usually it's inline. It will just show in one line. Block style content will show up on another line. Basically, multiple. It will, if you select, let's say P, it will automatically show to the next line because it's block style. So it applies to the following elements. Usually, block style elements include P, nav, main, and div. Then we have the padding, the border, and the margin. So for the padding, it's a spacing between the content and the border, just like what is shown here in the picture. A border is a spacing between the padding and the margins, this one. And the margin, lastly, is a spacing between the elements and its surrounding elements. So this one. I guess this picture perfectly encapsulates the padding, the border, and the margin. Then we have here selectors and classes. So what are selectors? They're actually used to find or select the HTML elements that you want to style. For example, as what I've said, P here is a selector. On our previous example, it was body. So in this particular code, all P elements will be center aligned and have the red text color basing on the rules that is set here. So we use the selector to identify which specific elements will the rules apply. Classes are actually also they select elements but with a specific class attribute. To select elements with a specific class, you have to write a period character followed by the name of the class. For example, p.hometown, meaning this styles all P elements with the class hometown. So this time, the background color would be yellow. So if you could remember our code a while ago, this one is now how it will show up in our HTML code. Okay. Then we have what we call pseudo classes. They're actually used to define a special state of an element. So they're only applied, the style is only applied when an element is in a specific state. One common example is for anchors. When you have already clicked the link or the anchor, so meaning the state right now is you have visited it. Therefore, the color of the link will now change to the color of tomato. But if you have not yet clicked that link, it will always be blue. Unless you have assigned for another color. Then we have here, if you are hovering your mouse to the anchor, it will automatically underline the text. So it's a pseudo class. Then we also have cascading rules, because there are times when two rules from the same cascade layer apply and both have equal specificity. The one that is defined last in the style sheet is the one that will be used. Meaning, by the virtue of cascading rules, the later rule, the one that is defined the latest, is the one that will apply. For example, here, we both set the color of H1 to red, then we actually set it again in a later time to blue. So which will be followed? Will the text color be red or will it be blue? Again, based on cascading rules, it will follow that is defined last. And the last one is blue. Hence, the text will be blue. Okay? Then we have what we call inheritance. So this is where descendants or inherit or acquire the properties of their ancestors. However, not all properties are acquired naturally. Non-inherited properties are identified with block style elements, including padding, margin, border rules. This means that your padding, your margin, your border rules will not be usually inherited. So example here, we have set the background to yellow of our body. This means that all relatives of the body will have a yellow background. Everything inside the body will have a yellow background. That's by the virtue of inheritance. Then we have what we call the float property. So the float property specifies whether an element should float to the left, to the right, or not at all. I actually think of it as similar to a text alignment in our Microsoft Word, where it will have the text aligned to the left or to the right. A float property is similar to that. So it's actually an adaptable property that can permit us to make layouts that are more difficult than the stack design that HTML assembles naturally. So for example here, we want our image to float to the right. Hence, it will float to the right. Just like this one. This is an image. It is now floating to the right because that is our code. Then we have the clear property. It specifies what should happen with the element that is beside the floating element. Okay, so it actually controls the flow next to floated elements using our float property. That is the clear property. And then in CSS, we actually work with fonts. So working with custom fonts on websites can be problematic because you are limited to fonts that the viewer of your site had installed in their computers. For example, you wanted to use a font called Roboto, but one user that is accessing your website does not have the font Roboto installed in his or her laptop. Hence, the font will not actually appear. However, we have a we were able to work around that because Google right now currently has Varium custom fonts, which is very nice. Okay, so you just have to include the link, whether it's not installed in their laptop or their computers, it will still show up as long as you're opening the Chrome browser. And EMS right here is a meta unit that signifies multiplier on the current text dimension. So for example, 2 EMS, meaning it's times 2 of the typical size. Then we have what we call CSS reset. It's intended to eliminate all browser defaults. It's because different browsers actually actualize their base CSS settings differently, which can prompt your CSS to deliver contrasting results to different browsers. So different web browsers are using different default settings, which might mean that your text or your content might show up in a different way on a different browser, hence CSS reset. However, this move can be quite controversial because according to some developers, it's redundant because most browsers have the same default settings. However, if you wanted to be sure, you could always do a CSS reset so that you know that your content will look exactly the same as you want it to. Then we have the last one, what we call the CSS lint. In topic 2, we have discussed the W3C markup, a validation scale. This one, for the CSS codes, we have CSS lint, which is an example of another validation service, but this time, it's used only for CSS code. So again, the CSS lint is used to determine whether there are errors in our code. And you don't need to enter a software to access this one. All you have to do is go to csslint.net, and you can now check your code. FYI, for your information, it actually gives more warnings than our typical HTML validation tools like the W3C markup validation service. So it shows more warnings. And these are the references I have used in this presentation. And once again, thank you so much for listening to me. And I hope you have learned something. Again, I am Mary Jade Jakosalem, an MSCA student currently studying at Ama University Online Education. Thank you, and I hope you enjoyed. Bye!